you're a pediatrician, and I want to say something about this because when I started medical school, I really wanted to go into pediatrics. Part of it was when I did my rotations and stuff. I really, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. Anybody who knows me knows that I talk about this openly. I just think pediatricians are the best doctors in the hospital. And I think it's because you're taking care of sick kids. And when I did my pediatrics rotation, no one was trying to check out early. Everyone, if a child came in who needed care, everyone sort of immediately just raised their hand and jumped in. And I don't know, I just think that dedication was something I really, really admired. You're a pediatrician. Your father was a pediatrician. And I just want to say, I admire that discipline so much. One of the things that strikes me here, and I remember even early in my career as a medical reporter, there were all these beats that people would cover. And one of them was the parenting beat. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to cover that beat in large part because I feel like it's so individualized. Like if I'm talking about Lyme disease or brain tumors or something like that, there's an objective contextual sort of fund of knowledge, which I think I can share that might be helpful to the audience. Parenting, the way that my parents raised me versus the way that I raised my parents, very different and very hard to say that one is right or wrong. It seems like it'd be very hard to make it objective in some way.
I think that's something that those of us who generate this literature have become very, very aware of. I have been lucky enough to be associate medical editor of our big book at the AAP, Caring for Your Baby and Young Child, Birth to Age 5. And I've actually just signed on to be editor-in-chief for the next edition. And over the last 2 editions, we have really tried to take out a lot of the paternalism. When we looked back to a couple of editions ago, there was a lot of telling parents how to feel. Don't be worried. Enjoy this. Don't be sad. And as I read that, I realized this is tremendously paternalistic. I can't be here telling somebody how to experience their own lived experience. That's not going to work. So we really scrubbed that language from the last edition, recognizing people are going to feel the way they're going to feel. We can't tell them what that should be. And you're right. Every parent is different. Every cultural tradition is different. Every child is different. So when we come back to that authoritative parenting goal, I look at it as a very fuzzy bullseye. But I think one of the things that we've seen since I got into residency in 1990 was an understanding that we have to find people where they are. We have to, and that means finding out by asking and really listening in an active way and engaging them and letting them know that we respect where they are and where they're coming from. And then asking permission rather than just, here's what you do, this is wrong, this is right. Just, are you interested today in thinking about a different way to do this? And when the answer is no, anything short of frank abuse or neglect, you're going to be like, okay, if you want to talk in the future, I'm here.
Do you think being a parent is harder nowadays than it was when we were kids?
That is such an apples to oranges question, but I think that there are unique challenges that our parents certainly didn't have to face. You hear about free-range childhood, right? And Memphis in the 1970s was not the safest place you could imagine. But I'd just get on my bike and be like, Mom, I'm going down to the pharmacy and I'm going to get a hamburger. She's like, great, take your allowance with you. And they didn't know where I was. I was climbing around in vacant lots all over town. And I came back for meals, and that was that. And that was a spectacular and wondrous time. And we were fortunate when our kids were young to live in a neighborhood that we felt we could do that in. Bunch of kids around the neighborhood. We figured somebody would come and get us if something happened. But you don't see that. And then you do see this means of the world coming in through the phone and mobile devices. I was lucky to have a leadership position at the American Academy of Pediatrics on the Council on Communications and Media, where we thought really hard about this and still are. In fact, I think there are new guidelines coming out shortly. But the idea that the world can creep in through these phones, that ideas of self-worth or perhaps inadequate self-worth, that political radicalization, that sex trafficking or exploitation can come in through this screen. You know, as our kids got older, we began to have to deal with that. We began to have to keep the phones in our bedroom at night. So that wasn't foreign to us, but I think it has evolved so far beyond where we were at that time. And as somebody who tries to provide guidance on this to parents, I got to tell you, it's a scary place out there.
You know, children that would, as you always hear, would stay out all day, come home when the street lights start to come on. That's how you were raised. That's how I was raised as well. I was in Michigan at the time. You were in Tennessee. Why aren't there free-range children anymore?
I think we saw this ramping up of fear. Somebody is out to get our children and we need to keep them under close watch, or, you know, the unmarked van is going to pull up with the puppy and the candy and they're gone forever. And I think my understanding is that a majority of the time when a child is taken, it is by a non-custodial parent, for example, who feels that they've been cut out of that relationship, and that a lot of those events don't occur with the stranger in the white van, but when they do occur, they occur with people the children know, which is a much harder thing to protect them against. But, you know, you and I both work in the media at different levels, but if it bleeds, it leads, they say, when you're trying to get people's eyes or clicks on a story. And so we have a very strong bias toward publicizing the worst things that happen. And we can do it in real time, and we can do it anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. So if a very bad thing happens in a community, I know about it in seconds, in minutes, and it makes it seem like horrible things are happening to lots and lots of children right nearby all the time, which is really not the case. Now, does that mean that we should, you know, send our children out into the streets for days at a time? I mean, there's probably a happy medium of making sure that they are safe and in places where we feel good about their safety and have a means to get help if they need it. But we definitely watched a transformation of the culture into sort of a fear-based culture of parenting.
Do you think we'll ever go back?
I do. I mean, we're already seeing some counter trends. And as you said, parenting is full of so many different trends and so many different ideas that there's sort of a competitive marketplace of parenting ideas out there. And the best ideas frequently get a chance to win. So you're hearing about these ideas of, hey, let's just go to the park. Let's go out into the woods. Let's put our phones down. I saw an article just a couple of weeks ago that kids are self-regulating. They know these things are not helping them, and they're moving to self-regulate, in some cases, their own use of these electronic media and work as they know they need to on real-world relationship, on, you know, as they say these days, touching grass, right? Yeah. They know they need to touch grass, and I think parents do too. So I think we're already seeing a significant change in terms of this perhaps helicopter parenting or hyper monitoring, and also this reliance on the electronics.
Yeah, I hope and think you are right. I mean, again, anecdotally, just my own kids. I'm not a parenting expert, but you know, I've noticed that what they're inclined to do nowadays is now they want to go for these long walks with their friends, these hikes. They just want to be outside. And I think the kids themselves, the young people themselves, the young adults now themselves are saying, "Hey, look, it's not how I want to live my life."
Exactly.
Let me ask you about some basics, if I can, while I have you. Sleep, safe sleep. That is a concern for parents, obviously. How have sleep recommendations changed since your kids were very little, and why does it matter?
So at the time, all parents, all their grandparents were taught by pediatricians, including my dad, that their babies needed to sleep on their stomachs in case they would throw up and aspirate. It would go into their lungs and they might choke or gag and even die. And they thought maybe that's what causes sudden infant death syndrome. And it took the Australians looking at who actually suffered sudden infant death syndrome and what the circumstances were to say, wait a second. The kids who are sleeping on their stomachs are having SIDS twice as often as the children sleeping on their backs. And this was mind-blowing. And yet, The data were there, and they were strong. And so just as I was coming through residency, we had the Back to Sleep program, which has now become the Safe Sleep program. And we've got even more data. So now we know not only should babies be sleeping on their backs, they should be on a firm surface. They should not be in the parent's bed. And I know that that is controversial in some corners, but that those data hold up very strongly across the whole population. They should certainly not be sleeping on a couch or a chair with a parent. Ideally, nobody would be smoking in the house. If they can, they should be breastfeeding. And they shouldn't have all that cool stuff in the crib that looks great on Pinterest or Instagram, but can lead to suffocation. So bumpers, blankets, stuffed animals, pillows, positioners, all those things can lead to entrapment and suffocation. We also changed the way cribs are made to put the slats closer together so that children's heads couldn't get trapped in the slats. They wouldn't get choked. So all those changes have led to a greater than 50% reduction in sudden infant death syndrome. And I will tell you, every morning when I round in the nursery, I've got just a couple of minutes to talk to parents. And the one thing that I emphasize, because this is the thing most likely to keep their children alive for the next year, is safe sleep.
But why is SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, so associated with sleeping on your stomach?
So I'm not an expert in sudden infant death syndrome. I would probably refer you to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Rachel Moon at the University of Virginia. But my understanding is it's much more complicated. It's not a choking situation at all. It's really an ability of the brain to detect high levels of carbon dioxide and respond to those levels. At least that's the going theory right now. So the problem is actually these babies are sleeping too deeply, in short, and they sleep so deeply that they don't respond to those rising levels of carbon dioxide and eventually just stop breathing. There are some genetic mutations that have been associated with an increased risk for this problem, but then there are also situations. And then there are some cases of sudden infant death syndrome that we simply do not understand. Everything was perfect, the situation was great, and these babies still stop breathing, and nobody knows why.
Yeah. I mean, you're being a good parent, and then this tragedy still happens. It's just so difficult to reconcile in any way. People look for answers, which is why I asked the question. Let me ask about nourishing children. Breast versus formula milk.
Right.
Are you a bad mom if you're not doing breastfeeding?
There was a time when we made people feel like that. And of things that I wish I could go back and change, that would be one of them. And yes, there are definitely physiologic advantages to breastfeeding, both for the newborn and for the mother. I think there was a time when we may have overstated the case a little bit. But yeah, for moms who are capable of breastfeeding and interested in it, it is a superb way to feed a baby. That said, formula is also really well constructed these days and showing major outcome differences between breastfed babies and formula-fed babies. The differences that do exist are not so vast that anybody's going to say, this is an awful thing to do, don't do it. And of the parents that I see every day, I get people all over the map and often for very personal reasons. And that's the other thing about asking and finding out where somebody is coming from. Mom will sometimes tell me, I tried it with my first child. I tried so hard. It was incredibly difficult. It was painful. I was crying. They told me eventually my child wasn't gaining weight and I had to give formula, and I just never want to go through that again. I am hardly going to be the person to say, well, let's go through that again, right? That's their lived experience, and it's valid, and we have a perfectly great option. Now, I would not advise people to make their own formula at home. Please leave it to the professionals. It's a really hard thing to do. But in terms of formula versus breast, I think we really have to individualize and find out what works for a given family, for a given dyad, give them all the support we can. If they're interested in breastfeeding, make sure that they've got good lactation support, good social supports, which makes it a lot easier. But ultimately, this is a personal decision. And certainly, as a male physician stalking into the room, I have no place telling somebody, okay, you got to do it this way.
This was a really challenging time for my wife. Our oldest daughter did not breastfeed well, and I remember my wife walking in and her just being in tears and thinking, I'm a terrible mother. This is something wrong, and the child's going to be adversely affected for this. And, if she missed a milestone in terms of her growth, her development, it's because I didn't breastfeed. They should not feel that way. You're being very clear about this as an expert.
Oh, absolutely. No, that let's remove that level of guilt altogether. This is hard enough without somebody putting that on you. Everybody needs an individual plan. A fed baby is better than a starving baby under all circumstances.
What about allergens? This has been a big topic lately, especially peanuts.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when we were talking about safe sleep, the other 180-degree spin that we've seen over the course of my career has been with exposure to foods that are considered allergenic, specifically peanuts and eggs. The degree to which this applies to other foods like fish and wheat is a little bit sketchier. But especially with peanuts, and again, it took somebody else just looking to see what happened. In this case, it was the Israelis. So we had this wave of peanut allergies. I think everybody with kids has known somebody or somebody in their family. And these peanut allergies can be absolutely life-threatening, incredibly frightening. Anaphylaxis to peanuts, eggs, and other foods are one of those emergency conditions that we have to treat immediately, or they can lead to very bad outcomes. Yeah. And our response to this, again, was the common sense response of, okay, well, let's not give kids peanuts or eggs until they're 2 years old, 3 years old. Let's just hold off. And it turned out that was exactly the wrong thing to do. It took the Israelis, who have these little crackers called bombas that are made of peanut, and they had an extraordinarily low rate of peanut allergies. All their kids were using these as teething crackers. So they're like, well, we're giving bombas to kids at age 5 and 6 months, and we've got very low rates of peanut allergy. What's going on here? So they ran the data, and the answer was, it was the crackers. It was that early peanut exposure. And so after I had to go through the desk drawers in my old office and clean out all of our old early feeding handouts, because they all said avoid, allergenic foods until age 2 or 3. And we had to throw them all in the recycling and print new handouts that said introduce peanut allergens as early as your child is ready for it, usually when they start solids around 6 months. Not a big glob of peanut butter that could get, be a choking risk, but a little smear on whatever they're eating. And it turns out that this early exposure, at least to peanut allergens and egg allergens, is the key to reducing the rates of these very dangerous food allergies.
I'm not an expert, but I think it's interesting to sort of think about things that we believe to be true and how they change over time. What does that mean for parents who are just trying to separate fact from fiction, fact from fad right now, who are listening?
So I talk a lot about the misinformation, disinformation flood that we're seeing right now. Let's acknowledge, first of all, there is no perfect parent. I don't know the way to be a perfect parent. So if you're putting that on yourself, let it go. You're not going to be that. And even if you were, I would know how to define it. So A, we're going to do things that we look back and think, I could have done that differently, right? But B, it's more important than ever to ask, where is this information coming from and what are the motivations of the person who's giving it to me? Now, full disclosure, I work closely with the American Academy of Pediatrics on our parent-facing information, because I know over decades of experience how dedicated everybody in that group is to making sure we get this right, including being willing to get egg on our faces and say, you know what, we were wrong when we were wrong. And that's really critical. Anybody who's never wrong, I don't trust. If nobody comes back, if somebody never comes back and says, yeah, you know what, we blew that, we need to redo it differently, I don't trust them, because none of us is perfect, right? So I'd really urge parents to look at trusted, reliable parties of information, sources of information that have been validated, that use real data, and honestly, talk to your child's doctor. Develop that relationship. We know that more than 90% of parents trust their children's doctor to give them good advice, and I think that's for a very good reason, because that's what we've dedicated our lives to doing. So bring it up. Ask it. I'm never offended. People come to me with stuff all the time. And those relationships, I think, are going to sort of steer us through this swamp of misinformation and disinformation that's out there right now.
Is there something that worries you in particular right now, some trend or something like that you think we're going to look back 10 years from now and say, hey, man, we got that one wrong?
Absolutely. And I think that trend is going to be extending the grind culture to our children. This sense that if they're not the very best of the best, then nothing else that they do matters. Children don't need the grind. They need to be grounded. They need to be able to play soccer because it's fun. They need to be able to learn piano because they want to play some songs for their friends. They need to be able to dance because they enjoy moving their bodies to music. They don't all need to be shooting for Juilliard or the New York Ballet or Stanford or whatever. Like, I hope that we live in a world in 10 years or 20 years where we can relax and let our children do stuff because it's interesting. And because it's fun, not because we're like, okay, they have to get into this school or pursue this career because there are no other options.
It is a weirdly competitive culture in this regard. I've just gone through this twice now with kids going to college, and it's bizarre to me sometimes to have these conversations with other parents. And my kids are smart kids, but they're good kids. I think they're grounded kids. If you met them, they're not talking about all their accolades and all that right away. They want to know about you. And they're curious kids, which I really love that about them. I got a quick lightning round I'd like to do with you, and then I do want to just get some advice from you personally for a second.
Yeah, hit it.
All right, so lightning round. Current wisdom on car seats, both in terms of position and how long.
Great. As long as you can and rear facing, as long as you can, each car seat will come with a height and weight recommendation on it. And when you take your child to their wellness exam with the pediatrician, their health maintenance exam, they're going to get a great height and a weight. And then take that back to the side of the car seat and see how it compares. We know that the forces on the head and the neck are a lot gentler when children are facing rear, especially, this, when they're babies, they've got huge heads, right? Big old Charlie Brown bobblehead. And supporting that head as well as we can, as long as we can, is critical. So at least age 2, rear facing, but really as long as you can. Ideally in the middle of the back seat of the car. Not everybody's car has a back seat or a middle, but you do want to make sure they're not going to get hit by an airbag wherever they're positioned.
Crib bumpers, yes or no?
No crib bumpers. No. So crib bumpers are among those soft things in the crib that can actually lead to entrapment and strangulation. So big no. And it's sad because there are some really cute crib bumpers out there. But really, the more boring your crib looks, the safer it is for your baby.
So no stuffed animals or blankets or things like that in the crib either?
Exactly. So this is part of my talk to every parent that I send home every day is please no heavy blankets, no stuffed animals, nice firm surface, baby on the back, not elevated, and ideally in the same room with the parent for the first 6 months. We know that sleeping near the parent is protective.
Screen time for infants. Yes or no? And if not at all. Not at all. I mean,
yeah, it's unnecessary. And the cool thing about the data, what infants are learning is how the physical world works. If you throw a ball, does it bounce? Does it stop? Does it roll? What happens? And their whole brain is trying to sort out the rules of the visual world. Nothing about a flat screen helps them understand that. Now, they can learn to tap and swipe and make noises and make lights, but that's not a learning process for them. What they really need is to engage, most importantly, with their caretaker's face. Anything that comes between your face and the baby's face is getting in the way because they're learning everything about the world from your facial expression, your voice, your smile, even your smell. And that's why reading with your baby, making faces at your baby, talking to your baby is by far the best thing you can do for their neurologic development.
Pacifiers, good or bad?
So pacifiers do provide some protection against sudden infant death syndrome when introduced. If you're working at initiating breastfeeding, it's a different way to suck, and so you want to make sure that breastfeeding is well established. Once that's in place, then the pacifier can be protective. Understanding you can't force a pacifier on a baby. Some like it, some don't. If they keep spitting it out, okay.
Better than sucking thumb, though?
I don't know that the data are there on the thumb sucking. It's easy to do data on a pacifier. Over time, the thumb sucking as a child gets into the toddler years can affect tooth development. There are some great habit reversal training techniques you can use to stop the thumb sucking that are not punitive. They just help the child move to a different form of self-calming.
Baby powder.
Nope.
No baby. This is it's literally called baby powder.
I know, right? The same way baby aspirin's called baby aspirin, but we should never give it to a child unless they have Kawasaki's disease. That's a different issue altogether. Right. So it can cause pulmonary problems. The old talcum powder used to have traces of asbestos in it, which was especially dangerous. But even current talcum powders, they sort of get airborne. Babies breathe them in, and honestly, a good ointment on the booty's going to do at least as well as the talcum powder.
White noise, helpful, harmful?
So it can help with sleep, but remember that baby's hearing is very sensitive. So a sound, when we crank it up, we're like, that's good. Way too loud for a baby. And there are reports of hearing loss as a result of chronic exposure to loud white noise. So really nice and quiet, nice and gentle, but you don't want to crank that thing up to the maximum settings or anywhere close because you can risk hearing loss.
All right, Doc. I feel like based on your answers, my wife and I did a reasonably good job. Reasonable. I don't know if A+ would be the grade, but we did we definitely passed.
We do not give out grades, so don't worry about it.
Is there you obviously write books. It was Spock, right? That was the book, I think.
Yes.
Good book, right? I mean, things have changed obviously since then, but where did you, besides your own dad and your mom, where did you go for your parenting sort of tips?
The thing that Dr. Spock, not Mr. Spock, because I am also a Trekkie, did that was revolutionary at the time was he was the first person to take some of the paternalism out of it. Now, we've moved a long way since then, but he was the first person to say, you know what? You probably have a pretty good instincts here. You definitely love your baby. If you listen to yourself, you probably have a really good idea how to take care of your baby.
Let me take a moment of personal privilege here just because I have you as my guest, and you are a few years ahead of me in terms of where your kids are. They're all out of the house. I'm really nervous about this whole empty nesting sort of phase of life. So I want you to talk me down for a second here. How's it been?
Every single day that my children live, they become more interesting. And that's the reward. Like I thought, like you, I am sentimental. I thought I'd be looking back and missing the babies and missing, having them read in my lap or pushing them on swings or whatever. But every time I meet them, they bring me new ideas, new visions of the world, new ways to think about things. And so I'm never like backwards looking because the person in front of me is so fascinating right now. And that just keeps going.
What a pleasure to talk to you, Dr. David. Thank you. A real pleasure, a real privilege. Thank you.
Sanjay, thank you so very much. I am looking forward to it. And keep enjoying this ride, man. It sounds like you are having a great time, and I promise it just keeps getting better.
I love it. Thanks. That means a lot.